Hey, it's Chad here. There's been a little bit in the news about Alan Dean Foster and Disney and them not paying his royalties on books like the one we're going to talk about this week, Splinter of the Mind's Eye. If this was a big podcast, if there were thousands upon thousands of people listening, which, maybe one day, or if we were making money off of this, I probably wouldn't run this because I wouldn't want to be advertising for a book whose sales would not go to the author. We're just a little show, and I don't think we're going to be driving up the sales anytime soon. And hopefully, now that the situation has come to light, Disney can do good by Alan Dean Foster and pay him the royalties he deserves for the books he has written. Pretty simple. Pretty simple idea. Hopefully, that'll get taken care of. But I just thought I didn't want to put this episode out without mentioning it. So, anyway, enjoy.
Hello, and welcome to Execute Chapter 66, a Star Wars fiction podcast where we discuss canon, legends, and beyond. Tonight we will be discussing Splinter of the Mind's Eye by Alan Dean Foster. My name is Beth Van Dusen, and with me as always are Chad J. Schonk and Ryan Schweck, so over to you, Chad.
This is your reminder that this is a book club, not a review show, so we're going to expect you to have done the reading before come in here or not care about spoilers. We also may spoil other things Star Wars related. In fact, I know we're going to spoil a little bit about the Season 2 premiere of The Mandalorian. So this is your spoiler warning. You have been warned. So Ryan, Mandalorian came back.
Yeah, we won't go into Mandalorian too much because I'm sure we will do an episode of the Needless Things podcast once it's over reviewing the season.
I believe we're obligated by law to do so.
Yep. Kind of relevant to our Execute Chapter 66, we got Cobb Vanth from the Aftermath books. I don't think they were being too careful about trying to hide that's what was going to happen. But it was still really cool to see him. I mean, they changed the story from the book, which I don't know if it was 100% necessary. But judging from the reaction that Cobb Vanth has gotten, I'm guessing we are going to see more of the character.
You're bearing the lead. Why does everyone love him?
No, because,
Because he's played by one of the sexiest people to ever live.
Yeah, and it's kind of cool that he's the Marshal, and there were some definite parallels between his other shows. So
He only plays Marshals.
That is true.
He's currently on Fargo playing a Mormon cop, like Marshal. And then, of course, Justified, and, of course, Deadwood. And Tim Oliphant gives real good Marshal.
I would love, a Star Wars Al Swearingen. I mean, I'm sure they can't do it, but it would be just wonderful.
I didn't have a problem with the changes they made to his story. I don't feel like they took away from anything. I kind of like the idea of him being saved by Jawas. I like when Jawas get a little more story than just scavengers.
Yeah, I kept watching because I've obviously watched it several times now. And I was like, man, he really picked up how to use this Mandalorian armor real fast. Like when he goes flying, I was like, that's got to be a skill that you learn.
It's been 5 years, right?
Yeah. I mean, depending, I guess, when he found it.
They don't say exactly when he got it.
I'm going to be honest with you. It was so long ago that I read Aftermath that I forgot. Halfway through, I was like, wasn't there a character like this? It was about halfway through when I remembered this character already existed because it's just been so long since I'd read Aftermath.
It's also just an interlude, I think, right?
Yeah, it's like 2 pages.
Yeah,
it's real quick. But yeah, mostly, we got a lot of Mandalorian stuff. Other news, Adidas released some sweet new Star Wars shoes. They did a whole Mandalorian collection. There's some Baby Yoda shoes, some other ones, but I totally bought $100 Darksaber shoes.
And I don't even wear Adidas, but when you posted those, I was like, yeah, those are some pretty sweet shoes.
They're so awesome. They're going to be here on Sunday. I cannot wait.
Nice.
My children, who want to get Nikes and all that junk, I was like, look at my sweet shoes. I'm just like, oh, God.
They're still going to think you're a nerd.
Well, yeah, I'm going to be wearing Star Wars shoes every day.
I got my plastic Darksaber. I just got the one from a Target Darksaber.
I really want a good one, though.
This is what I got for now, and it's nice. And I got my Black Series DJ from Star Tours.
Oh, yeah, I just got him.
Special place in my heart for Star Tours.
In other news, the Star Wars Lego Holiday Special trailer dropped. Have y'all seen this yet?
I haven't watched it yet.
Not yet, no.
It's pretty good.
Is it about Life Day?
It is about Life Day.
Nice.
Yeah, it's going to be about Life Day. Rey is the main character, but apparently it involves, on Life Day, Rey traveling through time to different eras of Star Wars. Kylo Ren is with her for some of this, and it looks hilarious. It's got shirt off Kylo Ren at one point.
Well, yeah.
It looks really funny. So,
is there a Lego Lumpy for Life Day?
I'm trying to think if I saw a Lumpy. There was definitely a Chewbacca. There were definitely lots of Ewoks involved at one point. I want to say there might have been a Lumpy in that trailer.
It just sounds like a Robot Chicken episode.
When you watch it, it looks almost like a Robot Chicken episode. Some of the stuff they say and do, yeah. But I think it's going to be funny. It comes out on November 17th, I believe. So
nice.
That's coming up soon. And then our big novel news, they have shown or revealed, I guess, more of the High Republic. They went ahead and revealed kind of two things. We know a little bit more about the setup. I guess what the Great Disaster is going to be some sort of hyperspace accident that causes a bunch of problems in the universe. But more interesting, we got a good look at the Nil. And kind of Nihil, however you're going to say it, who are split up, I guess, into these three divisions called Tempests. And they have like little pirate gangs, I guess. And then there's one position called the Eye, who is led by Marchion Ro, who is, I guess, our main villain. The design looks really, really cool. So looking forward to that. But more interestingly, there are two, I guess, antagonists in the High Republic. And the other is called the Dringir. Who knows how you say that? But have you seen these things?
No, I've been staying away from any kind of spoilering.
Well, then you are on the wrong podcast, lady.
Yeah. Yep.
So these Dringir are a force. They're sentient, but they're just kind of like an invasion. They are crazy looking. They're all tentacles and teeth, and they are plant-based. And they are just go to planets and take over. So to review, plant-based teeth tentacles. Where have we heard this before?
So it's a race of Audrey 2s?
Why you think that? It sure sounds like the Vong to me.
It does sound like the Vong.
Here they come. So yeah.
I thought it was pronounced Grisk now.
Yeah. Right, they're going to be a mixture. So yeah, that was our main Star Wars news. I imagine our news for the next couple of weeks is going to be nothing but Mandalorian type things, but hey, that's okay.
So this week we are reading the oldest Star Wars expanded universe novel, the very first Star Wars sequel. And so Star Wars' roots, there's a lot of roots to Star Wars when Lucas first created it. Obviously, he was inspired by Akira Kurosawa samurai movies. A lot of it's based on real life with the rise and fall of the Roman Republic and also Hitler. He was inspired by World War I and World War II movies. But one of the big influences on Star Wars and Indiana Jones as well, is the B-movie serial. And so I thought we'd talk for a second about one of the staples of B-movies, and I think one of Star Wars's most telling features that they've carried forward from B-movies is their use of monsters. It seems like every Star Wars story has to have a super cool monster in it. This book is no exception. Actually, Splinter of the Mind's Eye's got a lot of monsters. So we thought we'd take a second and just talk about a couple of our favorite, maybe off the beaten path Star Wars monsters a little bit. So Ryan, what did you come up with first?
So one of my favorites they did, and this one appeared on the Clone Wars, was the Zillo Beast.
That was like on my list.
The Zillo Beast, the design is crazy. It looks like a giant lizard type thing with some weird, like the feet are kind of almost tubular kind of. And then for good measure, it has a third arm coming out of the back for some reason. The thing is impervious to blasters and lightsabers, except in very certain spots that Anakin found. The story's, really cool. They capture it and take it back to Coruscant because Palpatine's decided he's going to clone this thing, and it gets out and goes after him. Kind of in a later interview, Filoni has kind of mentioned and hinted that it can sense dark energy and that it was going to kill Palpatine. It's just a cool design. It showed up later in the comics, in the Kylo Ren Age of Resistance, those kind of prequel comics they did to the sequels, where they found like there was a planet worshiping these things. The way it's presented in the Clone Wars is almost like a Godzilla type monster where it's so big and overbearing to them.
Almost kind of also a demigod almost too, right? One of these things.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful force that you could see people worshiping it and fearing it. And I looked at the Zilla Beast was one of the ones I thought of too, just because it's kind of unique. It's not something we see a lot in Star Wars.
Yeah.
Beth, what do you got?
Now that I've seen the first episode of The Mandalorian season 2, and say crate dragon, because I've read a lot of books with crate dragons in them, and that is not what I was expecting.
No, that was damn.
I was expecting some big lizards, and it was a giant ocean of desert snake.
But it was still a big dragon. It was also still just a big lizard too. Like we didn't even see the whole
We
thing.
only saw the neck.
The crate dragon is a famous monster to Star Wars fans, but not to normals. To casuals, now everyone knows what a crate dragon is because of that amazing scene. But
probably its biggest exposure before was Knights of the Old Republic.
Yeah.
Yeah, or either that or just the skeleton of one in A New Hope, you know?
The normals didn't know what the hell that was.
No.
When they watched it, and I went, is that the whole body of the crate dragon? Is that just part of the crate dragon? But now seeing one in action, they are so much bigger and monstrous than I ever thought in any of the books that I'd ever read.
It's scarier.
In Kenobi, Obi-Wan fights a Kangan crate, which is supposed to be the big monster, and I didn't picture it that big. I never once thought it was on Drogon size level.
Right.
Yeah, I pictured him kind of as big as, like, what is that, the Eureka or whatever from Attack of the Clones? Like, maybe a little bigger, but not like...
See, I guess I'm different. I've always thought they were these behemoths, out in the desert, which is why I was always kind of disappointed in games and stories that let you kill one, because I felt like they were kind of these immortal. Because I don't think a Tusken would fear a Nexu type thing. I don't think a Tusken would fear something the size of an elephant. Like it's supposed to be these enormous, huge monsters, legendary creatures. But what I'll say what I thought the Mandalorian did incredibly well is that is not the crate dragon I had in mind my whole life. That was cooler.
No, it was much cooler.
So I don't think it is. I don't think it is exactly the crate dragon we've been presented before. I think it is a fairly new vision of a crate dragon.
Because if you look at drawings and depictions and legends, they just look like very large lizards.
But what I loved was not even necessarily the design, but it's how it attacked. You know, the fact that it's kind of a cross between a dragon and a dune sandworm.
It's a trimmer.
Yeah,
That's what I
so people comparing it to Tremors.
It's a graboid.
Yeah, when they said you can't fly over it because they'll feel the vibration. So I was like, oh, you got to get on a rock. I know how this works.
Yeah.
And then it comes out of the top of a rock.
So I just had a couple I wanted to bring up. They're not as exciting. I'm a big fan of the Vornskir and their cousins, the Voxine. The Vornskir are a canine-like animal that I believe Timothy Zahn introduced in the Thrawn novels, which are basically Jedi hunting dogs. Is basically what they are. I believe Talon Card, who was the crime lord in those original Zahn books, had a pair of them. Didn't he? Or they like Sturm and Drang, I think they were called.
Yes,
I believe were his pets. What I like about them is they're creatures that the Jedi they've actually shown Jedi fearing at times, which I always thought was interesting. But then even scarier is the Voxine, and the Voxine are a crossbreed created by the Vong, where they bred the Vornskir with an animal native to the Vong that's poisonous. If I remember, isn't the Voxine what took down Anakin Solo?
Yeah, because it's got it spits acid and it has a poison tail and all sorts of
poison. Yeah. They're these grotesque beasts, but I just remember, as much as I kind of disagree with the decision to kill Anakin Solo, I do remember that scene being terrifying, and I do remember the beasts themselves being very scary because of everyone's reaction to them. And they're just this breed of dogs that hunt people down. They're considered a reptile hound. And I wanted to throw out one special mention to a creature that we don't know much about, that I think we would be reminisce, and that is the Suma Veramoth, better known as that big-ass metal thing that tried to eat the Falcon in Solo. Don't know much about that thing, that big tentacle octopus thing in space to get sucked into the maw. But man, it was awesome. And yes, it should have been the cover of like an Iron Maiden album. Okay, so this week we read Splinter of the Mind's Eye. For people who don't know, we talked about it last time, but Splinter of the Mind's Eye was the first Star Wars sequel. In 1970, I guess it would have been 74 or 75 when Lucas was putting Star Wars together. He hired science fiction writer Alan Dean Foster to write the adaptation of Star Wars. But Lucas put his name on it, so he basically hired Alan Dean Foster to ghostwrite it. That book came out before Star Wars came out as an attempt to drum up some excitement for the film in the sci-fi community. Part of the deal that he made with Foster, though, was, all right, I'll put my name on this, but you get to write the first sequel. In 1978, so just a year after Star Wars came out, we get Splinter of the Mind's Eye, the first official sequel. And yes, Heir to the Empire may be the Big Bang, but this is the first expanded universe book. And I'm going to go ahead and give you a little summary, and then we can talk about it. Set 2-ish years after A New Hope, Luke and Leia, along with R2 and 3PO, on their way to kind of a rebel recruitment summit, crash land on the planet Mimban. They find themselves in a mining town where they pretend that Leia is Luke's servant to fit in. We're going to talk about that a lot later. And discover that the Empire has a secret energy mine on the planet. They meet an old woman named Hala, who is not only Force sensitive, but also feels it in Luke. But not Leia, because, well, it was 1978. Hala gives them a shard of the Dark Crystal. Sorry, wrong podcast. Hala gives them a shard of the Kyber Crystal, a mystical gem that enhances Force powers. Our heroes make a deal with Hala. They help her find the rest of the crystal, and she will help them get off the planet. Luke and Leia then, for some reason, get into a playful fight in the mud that honestly feels more like foreplay than combat, and are arrested by stormtroopers for making a scene. In custody, they meet Imperial Captain Supervisor Grammel, reminding me that even the first Star Wars novel had an uninteresting Imperial officer I didn't care about as one of the main characters. The rebels are stripped of their gear and placed into a cell with 2 drunken Yuzum named Ki and Hin. Yes, Hin, which is 1 letter off from a notable missing character in this book that I'll explain later. Hala, using the Force, helps Luke, Leia, and their cellmates escape. They steal a vehicle and head to the temple of Bomojima, where Hala thinks the crystal is. On their journey through the swamps, they encounter a giant worm who tries to eat them, and Luke and Leia, in their escape, discover a small underground city. There, they meet another group of natives, the Kowei, whose champion Luke defeats in single combat to earn their respect. And I also believe that makes Luke Black Panther now. Pretty soon, Grammel shows up with someone else in tow, Darth Vader, Lord of the Sith, who Luke already knew was there because he felt it in the Force. The Kowei join forces with our heroes, kind of Ewok style, to battle the incoming Imperials, which they do battle, kind of Ewok style. The rebels escape, and Vader kills Grammel for incompetence. In the future, Vader will rely on the old chokey to handle this kind of thing, but here he just cuts the guy in half. Luke, Leia, and some of their new friends get to the temple and locate the Kyber Crystal, where they are attacked by some lizard snake thing, because you can't go anywhere in this book without some random animal trying to kill you. Vader arrives and pulls a bit of the ceiling down on Luke, immobilizing him. Leia picks up Luke's lightsaber and faces off against Vader and does, let's be honest, way too well. But he does mess her up pretty bad. But one of the Yuzum, wounded by Vader, uses his dying breath to free Luke from the rubble. Leia tosses Luke the lightsaber, because this is man's work, damn it. And Luke duels with Vader again. But again, this goes way too well. But then Vader tries to win it by throwing a glowing ball of power or something at Luke, kind of like a little Hadouken, but it doesn't work. And Luke unleashes hell on the man the author doesn't know used to be Luke's father. So does that make him Luke's father in this book? I don't know. Anyway, so Luke cuts off Vader's arm. Oh yeah, by the way, that happens. Luke just cuts off Vader's arm. Just clean off, whoop. But then Vader stands up, grabs his saber in his offhand, and comes at Luke. Young Skywalker, sure he is doomed, turns to the woman who the author didn't know was his sister, but really is his... Anyway, Luke turns to her and says, "I'm sorry, Leia. I loved you." And then Vader, one-armed, but ready to cut the little twerp in half, stumbles a little. You know, it's hard to keep your balance with a limb missing, and he just kind of falls into a pit. Yeah. Luke can feel through the Force that Vader isn't dead, and then he collapses, wounded from the fight, and Hala gives Luke the crystal, and Luke kind of hugs it, and it engulfs him at a light, and Foster makes a reference directly to St. Elmo's fire, which I thought was very odd. And then Luke comes back to life, and then Luke, Leia, R2, 3PO, and their new friend Hala, whom we all know will become a major character in the Star Wars saga going forward, head out to find a way off of Mimban, the end.
When I suggested us going back to read Splinter of the Mind's Eye, I knew it would be the very first Star Wars sequel. I knew it was the beginning of the expanded universe, and I also knew 5 years before the reveal of their actual relationship, there might be some hot twin-on-twin flirting. What I didn't realize was this. The main thing this book should be known for is this is the one where Luke pimp slaps Leia. Thoughts?
Okay, so Leia kind of has it coming in this book because she is just awful.
Okay, disclaimer for the Execute Chapter 66 listeners. We do not condone violence against women, no matter what they say.
As a woman, I am allowed to say this.
That's true, yes. You know how in like action movies, they always have to, they always have to have like a female bad guy to square off against the female hero? Like in a team book, so that way it's two women beating each other up. So you don't get the image of a guy beating a woman up. That's what Beth is here for. She's our Black Widow.
She's got it coming. She's just terrible in this book. I don't know what early script Alan Dean Foster was working off of.
Well, he wasn't. He was working off the movie.
I thought he was writing this while it was still filming.
Actually, it might have been. You're correct. It might have been. Yeah.
So he was working, from what I understand, off an early draft of the script. So I guess they lightened Leia up a little bit later in the drafts because this is not the Leia from the first movie.
I don't know. She, is pretty sarcastic and mean to them throughout the whole movie. I mean, at the end, she smiles and gives them a, medal, but...
She's tough, but in this, she's petty. She's a dick. She's actually, the biggest problem with her in this book is she's all over the place.
Yeah.
In some scenes, she's a coward. Sometimes Foster's trying to play her as someone who has PTSD because of her torture on the Death. She seems more traumatized by her torture on the Death Star than she does by her planet blowing up.
Mm-hmm.
When the Force Awakens novelization came out, and they made a big stink because Alan Dean Foster was doing the novelization, I remember talking to Dave about it, and he said, the characters are just off. The characters are just all off model. And rereading this, I was like, I actually don't know if Foster's ever been on model with the Star Wars characters. Like, these aren't right either.
Here's the main thing about Leia I highlighted. She says at one point, "Swear it," she demanded, her voice that of a steel kitten. That is bothersome.
This is also a man writing this book. And I think the way that Leia reads in this book, and I don't know anything about Alan Dean Foster, reads very much like a science fiction writer in 1978 writing a woman.
Yeah, it does read like a man who doesn't know how to write women, which was pretty much all science fiction writers up until the last, 30 years?
Certain point, yeah, up to a certain point. But it felt like he couldn't figure out what to do with Leia. Yeah, she's tough, but again, she's not tough in this. And she's very petty at one point. At one point, like, she shoots somebody and someone tries to give Luke credit for it. She's like, "No, I did that." Oh, when she hit someone with an axe. By the way, Leia also throws an axe in this book, which is crazy.
Which is what a career in politics prepares you for.
Yeah, she's also a very good Y-Wing pilot, apparently, as well. To get in kind of a bigger conversation, just to start us off, this book is old. I mean, this book is almost as old as me and Beth. It's actually older than Ryan. This book is literally older than Ryan. So I want you to go back in time, purge everything Star Wars. I mean, literally everything Star Wars from your brain except for A New Hope. Not Jedi, not Empire, none of that existed. All you have is Star Wars. Is this a satisfying sequel to Star Wars? With nothing else, nothing else, just you saw the movie Star Wars or read the book Star Wars maybe. And then you read this. Is this a satisfying sequel, or is it just, to me, seems really, really tiny?
It doesn't feel like a sequel. It feels like a small chapter in what would have been a sequel, but it doesn't feel like a complete story to me if we were going to a sequel.
Until we got to the last 10 pages.
Which it went off the rails.
Like, this is the journey to get to the MacGuffin you need for the rest of the story. Like, something happens, we need the crystal. Here's the part of the book where we go get the crystal. And then the climax happens later.
Yeah, I mean, this is The Hobbit. This should be just be The Hobbit, right?
Right.
Because it's under 200 pages. It's super short. I mean, it's partially short because there's not 75 pages of dwarves singing in Bilbo's house. But I don't know how to explain it. It doesn't. You're right. It doesn't feel like a full sequel. But what is strange is you get to the end of this book and like they've got the kyber crystal. They've got this woman who has Jedi powers. They could have been helpful going forward, but like there's never. Now, I wanted to point out when this book was made, part of the deal for this book was that if Lucas wanted to, he could make it into a movie. 2 out of the 3 cast members had already signed on to do a second movie, but guess which one hadn't?
It's a pretty easy guess. The one who doesn't appear.
So there's no Han Solo in this simply because they weren't sure if Harrison Ford was going to be in the second movie. So they decided to pretty much ignore Han and Chewie for the entire book. I think he's mentioned early on in it, in the flashbacks or whatever, or when Leia's basically, they're recounting to you some of the things that happened in the first book. So I think the characterizations are kind of off all the way around, right? Like, it's not just Leia.
No, it's all of them. Luke is crazy in this because he talks at one point about he studied other cultures and other planets on his uncle's farm in Tatooine. No, he did not.
Yeah. This is not farm boy Luke.
No.
Yeah. He calls himself a farm boy several times, but it doesn't quite live up to it.
He is moisture farming and hanging out in Tashi Station, picking up power converters. He is not studying other cultures. He doesn't know how to speak other languages.
Yeah, I mean, we have to remember this was written, if you just take Star Wars as kind of this pulp, movie that it was, right? What I like to call an elevated B movie. In the same way, I would say that, Indiana Jones is, or even what Tarantino does, right? Where they take the trappings and the cliches of B movies and they elevate them to make a great story, great product, but still incorporating the fun parts of those things. Splinter of the Mind's Eye to me, and we'll see this if we ever get to the Han Solo or Lando novels, just feels like, it's just a pulpy science fiction book, It's just kind of a pulpy science fiction book that stars characters from this movie we saw.
I found the quote I was looking for. Yes, Luke admitted modestly. I used to study a lot about certain worlds back on my uncle's farm on Tatooine. It was my only escape and educational as well. That is not Luke.
One thing I'll say about Luke's characterization is his constant ogling of Leia and thinking thoughts about her.
Oh my God.
He's very on brand for the Skywalker family. I was like, there's Anakin's kid.
Okay, first of all, it's very clear that Lucas did not know that they were going to be brother and sister until he made that decision fairly late in the game. There was no way for Foster to know that.
Yeah.
So you've got your hero and your princess, and now, yes, A New Hope sets up, I think, more sexual tension between her and Han, clearly. But if Han's not in the story, you got our hero, you got our princess. They actually used the phrase in here, I didn't mark it, I should have, where Luke describes what he's feeling as Leia as unrequited love. And I was like, oh, gross. Oh, gross. Like, not even the sister thing. You're right, though. There's a very kind of Anakin, like, she doesn't like me, but she's gonna.
Oh, I've got one highlighted here. Awkwardly pressed up against him, the princess seemed to take no notice of their proximity. In the dampness, though, her body heat was near palpable to Luke, and he had to force himself to keep his attention on what he was doing.
That'd be gross if they weren't related.
Yeah.
I don't want the word palpable to be used in any Star Wars book. It has no place.
It's something to make fun of and to point fun of, but at the same time, you can't fault Foster.
Like I told you guys, it's not the book's fault or the writer's fault that this stuff is weird.
Yeah.
But it's weird.
I was struck watching it that it doesn't completely not work in the Star Wars universe.
No, I mean, for that time frame.
The last 20 pages aside, which we'll get to. It just, I felt like in general, like not a particularly exciting view of the Star Wars galaxy, but a fairly realistic one, a fairly functional one.
One thing that kept sticking out to me was he had to plug in his lightsaber a lot.
A lot?
I mean, that thing was constantly dying, which makes sense.
He's got an iPhone. He's got a Force iPhone.
But I was thinking about it, like, I don't know if I hate that. Like, it could add some drama to the Star Wars universe if every once in a while your lightsaber started blinking out and you kind of had to tap on it like a flashlight to get some extra juice.
Well, kyber crystals weren't inside lightsabers at that time. They were a thing outside, hanging out in temples, so power got to come from somewhere.
I mean, there are early, if you look, of course, at the early Macquarie sketches of Luke, the lightsaber is tethered.
But yeah, the proto sabers from the old Knights of the Old Republic and some of the older books are.
And in the Dawn of the Jedi series and stuff, is the lightsabers were actually, what was it? Their Oculus Rift and not the Oculus Quest. They have a line running from the saber to a power pack on their belt.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of it, I thought it was interesting. We started off with Luke in an X-Wing, and it did kind of break it automatically where all of a sudden the Y-Wing was a 2-person ship. Which is not in I know it becomes that in other stuff, but it's not in A New Hope.
I had to go look back and look that up because I was like, wait a minute, is that a 2-person? Wait, is it?
I think this is the first time it was described as a 2-person ship. So they did end up making, in the role-playing games and in the canon, there were like a couple different models of Y-Wings. And one was kind of the one that was designed to carry a gunner, a second passenger. But that was definitely not something that was around then. In A New Hope, it's just 1 person per Y-Wing. So Hala, what did you think of Hala? Did you think that, to me, what Hala felt like was Foster trying to create Yoda?
Yes.
Just a crappier version of Yoda.
Same, but again, think there's no Empire and there's no Jedi, right? There's no other story but this one and the one before it. And so the next step, logically, is he's got to find a new master. And that's what Foster does in this book, is he finds Luke someone to continue his training, basically, right? Although Luke and Leia are both already, again, Leia has no force powers or is not force sensitive at all, and Hala can't detect it because, again, George Lucas didn't even know. Luke's pretty powerful in this, actually, isn't he?
Powerful, but not powerful enough to lift a piece of rock.
Yeah, I guess it depends on the moment.
Yeah.
I guess it does depend on the moment. Oh, here was a line that I really didn't like from Leia. She's about to square off with Darth Vader. Leia literally fights Darth Vader with a lightsaber and lasts for more than 2 seconds. And she says the line, "For the Force give me leave to kill you before I die." That's like a line out of a Conan novel. Right? It's literally like a by Crom away from being just like a Robert E. Howard book.
Surprised they didn't have her get like a chainmail bikini. Go ahead and get that out.
Oh, okay. So let's talk about that. They get to this planet and they crash land, and that's fine. Okay, that's pretty standard stuff. They crash land. And then why did they have to have the droids with them this whole time? It just kind of drags the whole thing down.
It does, but it's because they didn't have leave to put in any other characters at that point.
That's true. They land and they find their way into town, and their way of fitting in is for Luke to pretend that Leia's his slave.
Right. So he's a minor, and he has a slave who's also dressed as a minor. So why would anyone believe that?
What I couldn't figure out was, what did that accomplish? What did they get away with by pretending to be it didn't solve it. It didn't do anything.
I mean, you'd think that would go around town a lot faster. Did you see the new guy who's got the cute slave with him?
I was like, this furthers the plot absolutely zero. All it gives me is a moment where, with no warning, Luke slaps the shit out of Leia.
Maybe there weren't female minors? I don't know.
It seemed like there were, though.
He came up with it on the spot.
But he was just like, yeah, that's my servant.
So you know how in movies where you'll see they'll have the character and the girl that he likes, but they're not a thing yet, in an action movie. And then a bad guy will come by and she'll be like, quick, kiss me. And they kiss so that their faces are hidden. So when the bad guy goes by, he doesn't recognize them, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's happened in a million movies. This is what this is in this book. Instead, Luke just punches her.
It's taking a different route, I guess. That's something different.
I could not believe it when I read it. It just happens out of nowhere.
Actually, what I couldn't get past more was Hala comes up to them and she's trying to convince them that she has the Force. And she moves a spice shaker with her mind. At that point, we didn't know what spice really was. But now that we do know what spice is, I'm like, they just leave spice laying on tables? What?
Just sprinkle it on top of your pizza. It's an old mellow mushroom recipe. Just they have that scene where he slaps her. And then they get outside and she's like, why did you slap me? Rightfully so. And then they end up rolling around in the mud.
They have a mud wrestling competition when they're trying to stay hidden.
And so the whole book turns on this moment where they get arrested by the Imperials. And I'm not wrong, right? They're just kind of playing in the mud for fun.
I don't
Or they're play fighting? Like, it's so bizarre.
They're fighting like 5-year-olds.
And it's such a weird turn for the book to take to that's how they get captured. They're basically having foreplay in the middle of the road by throwing mud at each other. And they get I was like, why is that your decision? At what point in the creative process were you like, what'll get them busted?
I like this girl. I'm going to shove some mud in her face.
This book doesn't have a lot of story to it. I remember this book being a lot more kind of complex and weird than it was.
I think the different weirdness we felt, because I remember it being weirder in that I read it. I know my dad had it when I was growing up. So I was probably like 10 when I read it. And I already knew a lot of Star Wars at that point. So reading it, I was like, what is this? This isn't Star Wars. Yeah,
it's hard. It's hard. I asked that question earlier, but it is hard to imagine if this was literally the second Star Wars story you ever read, what would it feel like? Because I didn't read this until high school. So I don't think I read this until after I had read Heir to the Empire.
Yeah, I definitely didn't.
So this was, to me, it was going back and finding this book and checking it out and just being, you said, weirded out by how it doesn't work anymore or how it didn't fit. But I felt all that. And then this time I was just kind of like, oh, this is just kind of a, I don't know, maybe B- Star Wars book.
Yeah, it fit in way more than I thought it would. But even the Luke and Leia stuff, if it's before Empire Strikes Back, you can kind of see that from Luke still.
The thing that did feel weirdest to me, like I said, was I thought the character was terrible. Vader is very chatty. Like he is talking in ways that Vader does not speak.
Hang on, I've got a highlight. Skywalker, I had a difficult time finding out that it was you who shot up my TIE fighter above the Death Star station.
It's casual Vader.
It's casual. It's casual Friday Vader.
Anakin didn't even talk that way.
I try to imagine when he was talking like that, him saying that in the voice too, where it'd be like, it just doesn't work one bit.
It absolutely does not work.
He acted more like the head of a SWAT team, or like he was very casual in the way he spoke, but he was also, I don't know how to explain it. Again, he felt off too. Mm-hmm. He didn't even necessarily feel evil.
Yeah, it was just some dude doing his job.
Yeah.
Here's what it reminded me of, and this again may be Lucas's fault a little bit. One thing that once you've seen all the Star Wars movies will always feel weird is when you get to A New Hope and Ben and Vader are fighting off in the room off to the side from the hangar bay. Ben says, "You can't win, Darth."
Like it's his name.
Like it's his first name.
Yeah.
And I almost feel like, I think Foster kind of thinks that this is this guy named Darth Vader. That's one thing I wish they would special edition out. I wish they would get rid of Obi-Wan calling him Darth there, because it seems really dumb. Because no one does that to any other Darth in any other Star Wars thing ever.
I do think one awesome thing, if it was stayed in continuity with the movies, I mean, how cool would it be if when Empire Strikes Back starts, Luke just has a big red crystal around his neck on a gold chain for no apparent reason.
So let's talk about the end real quick. Get through the whole book, and Vader's mentioned a little bit, right? In Luke's thinking, in when we're inside Luke's head and everything, I guess, right? Or maybe in Leia's. And then he just shows up.
And does nothing.
Well, he does get his arm cut off.
Doing something, though?
I mean, it's not nothing. Not only is he off-brand character-wise, but Ryan, I know you're not a huge fan of rampaging Vader through the hallway at the end of Rogue One. Isn't this just the opposite?
I mean, all we've seen him do is beat some old man that's been living in the desert and gets shot down by some kid and a smuggler. A New Hope Vader is not the most awesome warrior in the world on screen.
Well, let's dispel. I want to talk about something else. This isn't exactly related to the book, but I want to bring this up. I've talked many times about there are certain things in the original movies that people consider sacrosanct that I actually don't like. Do you think if Lucas could change it, he would go back and not have Obi-Wan disappear like that? Because no other Jedi does that. They disappear after they die, maybe. But the fact that he just goes poof is not something that ever comes back in any other any other Star Wars story.
I don't know. It's so hard to think of that scene if Vader stabs him and his dead body is just laying there.
Yoda disappears into a fluffy, sparkly cloud. Qui-Gon's body just lays there.
Until they burn it. You know how you could fix it? You could have that scene happen just like it does, but then there's like a quick shot of Obi-Wan just like peeking his head around the corner, and that he did it like Luke style from Last Jedi. Yeah. And then he gets blown up on the Death Star.
That would be funny though if he did disappear, but then was trapped on the Death Star when it blew up. It's like that's really at the end. That's really Ben talking to Luke over the comm.
Yeah, it cuts to him, and you see him leaning over the microphone.
Right? Yeah.
I think that may be my new personal headcanon, because there's nothing that dispels it.
Use the Force, Luke. What? Somebody get that old man off our channel. We can't hear. Yeah. I have a lot of soft spot for this book because of its place. Because of what it did begin. I don't have it in front of me, but if you get the Kindle version, not even the Kindle version, if you just get a version of it that was printed when it was, because this book, came out, and then for a long time, you could only kind of find it at used bookstores. Mine still has the stamp from the Bookworm on Hugh Howell Road in Tucker, Georgia. Then in the mid 90s, when the EU started really ramping up, and then the rumors of the prequel started coming, they reprinted a bunch of these old books, like the Brian Daley Han Solo novels, the L. Neil Smith Lando novels, and Splinter of the Mind's Eye. And in it, Lucas wrote an introduction. And I've read it before on Needless Things, so I'm not going to talk about it, but I'm not going to read it. But basically what it says was that he wanted Star Wars to be told by many storytellers. It basically set up the whole idea of the expanded universe. Basically said, it's cool to see what other people are doing in this galaxy right as I'm getting ready to dip back into it. And at that time, he was working on the special editions and seriously considering the prequels. So Splinter of the Mind's Eye was part of Lucas's plan from the beginning. He liked the idea of setting up a world for other people to tell stories in. So when people, it's just something I would always pull out when people would try to dismiss the expanded universe and say that none of it counted or it was a bunch of junk. I'd be like, yeah, but it's kind of what he wanted. He wanted this pulpy universe to keep existing and to tell different stories in it. If he knew they were brother and sister, highly irresponsible not to tell Foster.
I don't know that he knew that at the time, though.
He did not. He absolutely did not. Because
otherwise, ew.
So in Empire, there is that boy's our last hope. No, there is another. He's talking about Leia.
Oh, that's a whole different conversation, saving for from a certain point of view.
Okay.
We'll save that because there are so many things to go over in that book.
Yeah, and we have the I guess the Kowei, the Kawaii, Kowei. They kind of fought like Ewoks.
Yeah.
Like they set up this trap to fight him, and they're like dropping stalactites on the Imperials and stuff. And I was like, this is very Endor.
They're like little ninja Ewoks. All of a sudden they like appear and then disappear again.
Yeah. And I'm trying to remember, wasn't there a very sad storyline about the Yuzum all being drunks?
Yes.
Yeah, they were slaves and they were drunk and.
Yeah, that was when they were like drinking booze off the ground and stuff. Like looking.
Oh no, that's the Yuzum are the ones who fight with them. It's the Greenies. The Greenies, that's what they're called. The Greenies are the ones who are like begging for drinks and drinking liquor off the floor, and it's actually really upsetting.
Isn't Greenies what you call like a Quaalude in the 70s?
I don't know. I didn't take Quaaludes in the 70s.
I think you're right.
It's like it's a code. It was a code for some type of pill, whether it was ludes or whatever. I don't know. Yeah, so that was the Greenies. Okay, that were the sad, alcoholic, almost Native American-ish type characters.
Yeah,
in a way. I mean, it was very.
They were the groveling, kind of bothersome, problematic creatures,
oppressed minority.
Yeah. My biggest problem with Leia is not the bitchiness. It's how wrong her character was written in that she says that she was drawn to the rebellion because the Empire pushed down art and she was politically naive. So she says, I was as naive as you are, but creativity and vitality suffer through a harsh government. No.
Yeah,
that's
again, even taking everything else out of it. Again, even forgetting everything else we know and just thinking about these two things, it still doesn't fit. It still doesn't work.
Even no matter what version of the script you had, she was still a senator.
And you're right. Maybe he hasn't seen the movie at all by the time he's working on this.
Well, no, the movie isn't out by the time he's working on this. He's working off a early draft of the script, but
not for Splinter of the Mind's Eye.
Yeah.
For Splinter of the Mind's Eye, he's writing, a sequel to that book. He probably started it right away, but it came out a year after, so he'd at least had seen the movie by the time this hit shelves. And I even did the thing, like any Star Wars fan does. I try to put the actors' voices when I'm reading it, and I couldn't hear Carrie Fisher saying any of these things.
No.
I couldn't hear James Earl Jones saying any of these things. Like, I was trying to read the Vader dialogue, going like, that doesn't work at all.
Once again,
That's all yeah. But when I sat down to read this book again, I read the whole thing today. When I sat down to read this book again, the only thing I remembered was Luke cutting off Vader's arm. And then him tripping down a pit. Because go back and read it. Nothing really happens.
Oh, no. I reread it really recently. And he just falls.
Vader is coming to finish Luke off. Luke turns to the woman sister that he loves and confesses his love, although she's unconscious, so she doesn't hear it. So it's a cop out there. But
that's probably for the best.
He tells her he loves her while she's asleep. He comes over, and then Vader is wobbling because Luke and Leia have kicked the shit out of him so much, apparently, that Vader's wobbling, and he just takes like 2 steps wrong to the left. and falls in a hole.
Although if they had filmed it, that would give a really good like visual of him falling and doing the no.
I'll say this: reading it made me laugh. Like, it really did make me laugh. Like, didn't make me fear Vader, but he's like, he raises, he's only got one arm and he raises his blade up, and then I think it literally says like he takes like 2 stray steps to the left or something. And then like again another just another reason to put up guardrails in the Star Wars galaxy. All these damn holes everywhere. It's all I remembered. I remembered that, and I remembered Luke going like, he's not dead. And I'm like, of course he's not dead. But I'm reading this in 1995. So,
well, even reading it when I was 10, by that point I'd seen
right.
Empire. So yeah, he's not dead.
What I did find interesting though was how, if you look at this book again in the context of when it came out, of how maybe someone in the science fiction community would have seen Star Wars, which is just this kind of goofy, pulpy sci-fi stuff, that it wasn't necessarily this big epic that we now think of it as, that it was just, here's this one cool story about a space wizards and a princess, and now I'm going to do another one about space wizards and a princess. And I don't know. I wonder how, from someone like Foster, who was an experienced science fiction writer, I wonder how he viewed it as opposed to how we view it now. I know it's impossible for us to really know. Like I said, this book is literally, I think that my paperback I have in my hand is literally older than Ryan. But I don't know. It's always been hard for me to figure out this book because I've never been able to figure out really how it was received. Or did anybody read it?
I mean, surely they did. Yeah. Well, I mean, if it comes out, a year after A New Hope, roughly, that's when the rest of the merch starts hitting. And so there was a big push at that time. But we're adults. I mean, I don't know.
There was this whole cycle of what for, these 7 books there in the 70s and 80s that were technically Star Wars expanded universe, but had a very different. It's not that their vision of the world was all that different, but they had a different vision of what type of stories to be telling.
Well, I feel like back then, like the tie-in book, was a pretty big thing that people did. Not that they were popular, but I mean, you would have like tie-in books to the A-Team and stuff like that. There were these kind of weird, cheap other stories, and lots of properties were treated like that. And it wasn't necessarily made to create a universe or canon or anything like that.
Right.
It was just some more disposable entertainment with some IPs that you had access to.
But have you read the Brian Daley books? The original Han Solo books?
It's been forever, but I have.
Because they feel stylistically much closer to this. And yeah, they feel, to me, they don't feel like cheap throwaways. They don't feel like something someone just did for cash. They feel like just kind of fun little pulpy B story, B level science fiction books.
Mm-hmm.
If they didn't have Han Solo and Chewbacca in them, because in those books, the only characters are Han Solo and Chewbacca. And they don't feel, again, it's just, I think they're just trying to figure out what kind of, they're still telling the pulpy stories that Star Wars is based on in a way. I don't know. It's a weird period that I'd like to dip back into at some point. I'd love for us down the road, maybe to check out like Han Solo at Star's End. I don't know what I was expecting, I guess, going back and reading, because it's probably been 30 years since I've read this book.
I was, like I said, I was 10 when the first time I read it, and I remember it being really weird. But then, I was 10. I was like, Ewoks are cute. Here's a book. This book
Ewoks
is
are
weird,
cute.
but I didn't remember it being quite so twin touchy.
Yeah, that wouldn't have stood. I actually thought it was kind of mundane. Like, it just, there's not a lot. I mean, it's only 199 pages, the paperback, and it has like 3 beats.
Yeah, I was 64% through with what my Kindle said I had before it got to the end of the book. And then it said, here's some stuff you might also want to read. I'm like, wait, but the book is over?
I mean, it's a good 20% of going across the lake, so it goes fast.
Yeah, it just felt, it really feels like 3 things happen in the whole book. It goes by really fast, and it definitely does not, to me, feel like a worthy, even like I said, discounting everything else, it still doesn't feel like a worthy sequel to Star Wars. But in the greater context of the expanded universe, it's not a bad little story. I can't wrap my head around it because, like I said, he cuts Vader's arm off.
It's not a badly written book. It's a decently written book. And I remember one of the lines I highlighted that stuck out to me was something about the Stygian blackness closing in around them. I was like, wow, that's pretty good for a sci-fi novel of a Star Wars franchise, because most writers don't use words like that in Star Wars books.
Well, that's Splinter of the Mind's Eye. If you haven't read it before, you're probably not the type of person that will. But, it's a cool, at the very least, it's a cool artifact, and it's a very cool part of Star Wars history.
But if you did read it when you were young, go back and read it again. It's different.
Absolutely. And if you're lazy, there's also, I believe, a comic adaptation as well.
There is.
Like a 4-part comic adaptation. So, Beth, what are we going to read next time?
Romeo and Juliet. Lost Stars by one of all of our favorite Star Wars authors, Claudia Gray.
The one Claudia Gray I have not read.
Well, time to get to work. It's really good. And this is why I was being given crap about getting a Rebel symbol and a Galactic Empire symbol on my car, because this is the book that makes you see both sides.
Let you know there's good people on both sides.
Yeah. Pick a side.
No.
I don't care what you think. You can't be friends at the end, no matter what the results are.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. And we will talk to you guys very, very soon. Thank you for tuning in.